The discovery of betrayal by the person you trust most is not a single moment of pain, but a seismic event that fractures your entire reality. It begins with a cold, sickening suspicion, a misplaced phone, a change in routine, a gut feeling that something is fundamentally off. You try to rationalize it away, convincing yourself that your own insecurities are to blame. You tell yourself that trust is the foundation of a relationship, and you owe it to them and to the life you've built. To dismiss these nagging doubts, this period of uneasy denial is the calm before the storm, fragile peace maintained by willful ignorance. Then comes the moment of confirmation. It might be a text message left open on a laptop, a credit card bill with a mysterious charge, or a story from a well-meaning friend that doesn't quite add up. The truth doesn't always arrive with drama. Sometimes it seeps in quietly, its quiet horror more devastating than any shout. The world seems to slow down. The air feels thick. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat of panic and disbelief. This is the instant the ground gives way beneath you. The shared memories, the inside jokes, the plans for next year, all of it is suddenly cast in a new, sinister light. What felt like love now feels like a performance, and you were the only one who didn't know it was a play. The immediate aftermath is a torrent of conflicting, paralyzing emotions. Humiliation washes over you first, the burning shame that you were so blind, so gullible. You feel like a fool for having believed in the fairy tale. Then comes a white-hot rage, a pure and primal anger that demands an outlet. You want to scream, to break something, to confront the person who has done this and make them see the devastation they have caused. This anger is often quickly followed by a profound sense of loss. The future you envisioned together, the house, the family, the growing old vanishes in an instant. You are not just losing a person. You are losing a potential life. Amidst this chaos, there is a desperate, almost childlike need for explanation. Your mind races, trying to piece together a timeline to find the exact moment where things went wrong. You search for a reason, any reason that could make sense of the senseless. Was it something you did? Something you didn't do? This search for meaning is a trap, a way of trying to regain control over a situation that is fundamentally out of your control. The betrayer holds all the cards of why, and you are left the shattered pieces of what now. It is at this precise crossroads, drowning in this storm of pain and confusion, that every instinct screams for a reaction. The impulse to call, to text, to demand answers is overwhelming. It feels like the only way to release the pressure, to hold the other person accountable for the pain they have inflicted. This is the critical juncture where the path splits. One road, well-traveled and loud, leads to confrontation fueled by raw emotion. The other road, quieter and far less obvious, is the path of silence. It is not the silence of weakness or defeat, but a conscious, powerful choice to withdraw from the drama and reclaim the narrative. It is the first, most difficult step toward healing. Taken not for them, but for yourself. The instinct to react when wounded is a fundamental part of our biology. It is a fight-or-flight response triggered deep within the brain, a primal scream against a perceived threat. In the context of betrayal, this translates to an overwhelming urge to confront, to accuse, to demand an explanation that can somehow stitch your shattered reality back together. To choose silence in this maelstrom of emotion feels unnatural, almost like a violation of your own sense of justice. It can be misinterpreted as passivity, as if you are simply accepting the unacceptable or lacking the courage to stand up for yourself. This is the greatest misconception about the power of silence. It is not an absence of action. It is a different, far more potent form of it. When you immediately confront your betrayer, you are, perhaps without realizing it, entering a game whose rules they have already defined. The confrontation becomes a transaction. You offer your pain, your anger, your tears, and in return, you demand a satisfactory explanation, an apology, or at the very least, an admission of guilt. But this is a transaction you are destined to lose. The person who has betrayed you is already operating from a place of deception. They are prepared for your anger. They may have rehearsed justifications, crafted excuses, or even prepared to gaslight you, turning the confrontation back on you by questioning your trust or your actions. In this dynamic, you are the supplicant, begging for the truth from someone who has already proven themselves dishonest. You are handing them the power to validate or invalidate your pain, and in doing so, you are giving them a second victory. Choosing silence is the conscious decision to refuse to play their game. It is a unilateral withdrawal from the toxic economy of blame and justification. By not reacting, you starve their narrative of the oxygen it needs to survive. There is no argument for them to win, no tears for them to dismiss, no anger for them to use as evidence that you are the unstable one. Your silence creates a vacuum, and into that vacuum rushes everything they hope to avoid: their own guilt, their own uncertainty, and the stark, unmediated reality of their actions. Without your emotional outburst to react against, they are left alone with the consequences. They are forced to confront the silence they have created, and it is in that quiet space that their own conscience, if it exists, will speak the loudest. This is where silence transforms from a mere lack of sound into an active assertion of sovereignty. It communicates a simple, devastating message: you are no longer the arbiter of my emotions. Your actions have disqualified you from having any opinion on my state of being. This is the reclamation of power that the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote about in his Meditations. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. By staying silent, you are applying this ancient wisdom. You are asserting that your peace, your self-worth, and your next steps are not contingent on their explanation or their apology. You are taking the entire situation, the betrayal, the pain, the confusion, and internalizing it not as a problem they must help you solve, but as an event that you alone will process and overcome on your own terms. In Mark's story, his silence was not a single decision but a daily practice of discipline. Each unanswered text message was a reaffirmation of his worth. Each time he resisted the urge to call and scream was a deposit into his emotional bank account. His ex's attempts to provoke him were like shouts in an empty room. The only echo that came back was the sound of her own actions. His silence was the container for his own healing, a sacred space she was no longer permitted to enter. It was the foundation upon which he would eventually rebuild, not for her, but for himself. It was the first and most important declaration that his story was no longer about her betrayal, but about his own resilience. To understand why silence is such a devastatingly effective response, we must first understand the psychological state of the person who has committed the betrayal. In the immediate aftermath, when they are caught, they are often grappling with a volatile cocktail of emotions: guilt, shame, and fear. However, the human psyche has a remarkable capacity for self-preservation, and it quickly seeks the path of least resistance to alleviate this discomfort. This is where the desire for a reaction from you becomes paramount. A confrontation, an argument, even tears, these are all forms of engagement that provide a twisted lifeline. Your anger gives them something to push against. Your pain gives them a problem to manage, a distraction from the core issue of their own character. Your demand for an explanation allows them to launch into their prepared justifications, to shift the blame, to reframe the narrative into one where they are not the villain, but perhaps a victim of circumstance or your own inadequacies. This is the subtle trap of the confrontation they secretly crave. It allows them to transfer the weight of their guilt onto the shared drama of the fight. The conversation ceases to be about their betrayal and morphs into a debate about your tone, your past mistakes, or your inability to communicate properly. In this chaotic exchange, they are no longer alone in the spotlight of their shame. You are up there with them, sharing the stage. Your emotional response becomes their absolution. If you are yelling, they can play the rational one. If you are pleading, they can feel powerful. If you are accusing, they can become defensive. Every one of these dynamics serves their ultimate goal: to avoid sitting in the quiet, stark solitude of what they have done. Your silence shatters this entire psychological escape route. It is the equivalent of turning off the lights and leaving the room. Suddenly there is no drama to get lost in. There is no argument to win. There is only the deafening, quiet, and the unchangeable fact of their actions. This forced inactivity is agonizing for someone seeking external validation. Without your reaction to guide them, they are plunged into a sea of uncertainty. And as studies in behavioral psychology show, uncertainty often generates far more anxiety than facing a known, even negative outcome. The human mind, when left without data, will inevitably generate its own and it will almost always imagine the worst. They are left to wonder what you are thinking. Are you plotting revenge? Are you so profoundly hurt that you are beyond words? Or, most terrifyingly, have you simply moved on so completely that they no longer warrant a single thought? Their imagination, fueled by their own guilt, becomes your most powerful ally. They will likely project their own worst fears onto your silence, imagining you hold them in a contempt far greater than you may actually feel. This self-inflicted psychological punishment is far more effective than anything you could verbally articulate. Your words can be argued with. The scenarios they create in their own minds cannot. This is why in Mark's story, his ex eventually admitted that his silence haunted her. His non-engagement forced her to conduct a relentless internal trial where she was both the accused and the prosecutor. There was no one else to blame, no tangential argument to pursue. Every text she sent into the void, every attempt to provoke a response, only echoed back, reinforcing the finality of his decision and the magnitude of her loss. By denying her the reaction she sought, Mark denied her the opportunity to dilute her guilt. He left her alone with it, and in that solitude, she had no choice but to begin to face what she had done, not as a shared problem, but as a failure that was hers and hers alone. To reconcile, the desire for revenge after a profound betrayal is a natural human impulse. It stems from a deep-seated need for justice, for a cosmic rebalancing of the scales that have been so violently tipped against you. The fantasy of making the other person feel the same searing pain they inflicted upon you can be consuming. It promises a cathartic release, a sense of reclaiming power by becoming the agent of their suffering rather than the victim of it. Yet this path is a mirage, actively seeking to harm them, whether through vicious words, public shaming, or petty acts of retaliation. Creates a dangerous paradox. It keeps you tethered to the very person from whom you need to break free. Your emotional energy, your daily thoughts, and your actions remain centered on them. In a cruel twist, the betrayer continues to occupy the central role in your life, just now as an antagonist instead of a partner. This is not freedom. It is a different form of imprisonment. The cleanest, most profound form of revenge is not about orchestrating their downfall, but about architecting your own renaissance. It is a shift in focus from external punishment to internal elevation. This is where silence reveals its true power as a strategic foundation. Your silence is not just the absence of communication. It is the active creation of space they can no longer access. Into this space, you pour all the energy you would have wasted on anger and plotting. You invest it, instead, in yourself. This is the ultimate declaration of independence, demonstrating, through tangible action, that their betrayal was not a conclusion, but a catalyst for a level of growth they never inspired in you. This journey of thriving is multifaceted. It begins with the physical realm, hitting the gym not as a punishment, but as a reclamation of your body and its strength. The exhaustion of a good workout replaces the exhaustion of emotional turmoil. The endorphins provide a natural antidote to the pain. It continues with the intellectual and social spheres, picking up new hobbies, rekindling old passions, and surrounding yourself with a supportive community that reflects your true value. These actions are not for show. They are the building blocks of a new identity, one that is not defined by the relationship or its painful end. The moment this new, elevated version of you becomes visible is when the true revenge takes effect. When they happen to see you, whether in person or through the curated window of social media, they do not see a broken soul pining for them. They see someone who is visibly stronger, more at peace, and engaged with life. This reality contradicts the narrative they may have constructed to justify their actions. The narrative that you were holding them back. or that they left for something better. They are confronted with the undeniable evidence that the problem was not you, but the choice they made. They are faced with the chilling possibility that they did not upgrade their life, but instead, they lost a person who was capable of remarkable growth without them. This is the mic drop moment. It requires no words, no gloating, no confrontation. Your existence becomes the statement. As Mark focused on his own healing and growth, his ex's eventual apology felt hollow, not because the words were insincere, but because they were irrelevant. Her validation was no longer a currency he dealt in. He had built a life whose value was self-determined. Her admission of guilt was akin to someone returning a single, chipped cup from a set they had stolen, after you had already acquired a whole new, far superior service. The offer's not tempting. It is simply a reminder of what was lost, and more importantly, what was gained in its place. This is the pinnacle of reclaiming power, when their attempts to re-engage are met not with anger or forgiveness, but with profound, unshakable indifference. The greatest revenge is a life lived so well that their presence in it becomes a historical footnote, not a current event. The journey through betrayal, guided by the protective power of silence, does not end with the absence of pain or the achievement of indifference. These are significant milestones, but the final chapter is about something more profound: integration. The goal is not to simply seal the wound and pretend it never happened, but to learn how to carry the scar with wisdom, allowing it to serve as a reminder of your resilience, not your victimhood. This is the process of transforming a deeply painful event into a source of enduring strength, ensuring that the betrayal, while a part of your history, does not dictate your future. This phase begins with a crucial and often difficult shift in questioning. Initially, our questions are externally focused. Why did they do this? How could they be so cruel? These questions keep us trapped in their narrative. The healing process demands we turn the inquiry inward, not with self-blame, but with a compassionate and clear-eyed curiosity. The new questions become, what did I learn about my own boundaries? Were there red flags I minimized because I wanted to see the best in them? Did I settle for less than I deserved in the name of love? This is not about taking responsibility for their actions. That burden remains entirely theirs. It's about reclaiming agency over your own patterns. It is the difference between being a passenger in your own life and becoming the driver. This reflective work is where the initial silence bears its most valuable fruit. By not exhausting yourself in a fruitless battle for answers from the wrong person, you preserve the emotional and mental energy required for this deep internal audit. You can now process the experience on your own terms, perhaps with the help of journaling, therapy, or trusted confidants. You can educate yourself, as Mark did, by reading about relationship dynamics. This period of study and self-reflection is what the ancient strategist Sun Tzu meant when he wrote, "Victorious warriors win first and then go to war." In the context of future relationships, winning first means doing the internal work to understand your own needs, attachment style, and non-negotiable values before you enter another partnership. It means auroring yourself with self-knowledge so you are less likely to repeat the same patterns. The ultimate outcome of this process is not just recovery, but a fundamental upgrade in your operating system. You emerge not merely healed, but wiser. Your trust does not become weaker. It becomes more discerning. You no longer offer it as a default, but as a privilege that must be earned through consistent, aligned actions. Your boundaries, once perhaps fuzzy or flexible, become clearer and more non-negotiable. This newfound wisdom is your greatest shield and your most valuable asset. It ensures that the pain you endured was not wasted, but was instead alchemized into a powerful tool for navigating the world. When someone betrays you, they attempt to steal more than your trust. They try to steal your narrative, your sense of safety, and your belief in your own judgment. The path of silence and subsequent self-work is the process of taking it all back. You reclaim your narrative by refusing to let their actions define your worth. You reclaim your safety by building it from within, making it independent of external validation. And you reclaim your judgment by learning its lessons and sharpening its accuracy. The chapter of the betrayal closes not with a dramatic finale of confrontation, but with the quiet, steady turning of a page. You carry the lesson forward, but you leave the weight of the pain behind. The power is, and always was, in your hands, not the power to change the past, but the power to author a future that is stronger, wiser, and authentically your own.